The alerts hit my phone faster than I could open them. One after another messages I'd supposedly sent were sitting in my thread with relatives' pleas for money-short lines written in a tone that wasn't mine. My name stood under each of them. I called my cousin Ellen before panic could settle. "Mark, are you all right?" she asked the moment she picked up. "I didn't send those texts." "Then who did you said you needed help?" "No, someone used my phone or something tied to it." Ending the call didn't settle anything. The message log showed each text had been sent mid-shift, while I was elbow-deep in circuit boards. They weren't drafts, they were delivered. Opening the iCloud dashboard felt routine, until I saw an unfamiliar laptop listed under active sessions. The location hovered near my neighborhood too close to dismiss. Removing the device did nothing. It reappeared seconds later. Changing the password should have locked the intruder out. Instead, a prompt asked if I had just logged in from that same unknown laptop. My stomach tightened. Whoever it was wasn't just accessing my account, they were monitoring it in real time. I shut off syncing with a single tap to stop the cascade of alerts. My shift ended an hour later, but I stayed behind. The old company computer at the back desk, slow but reliable, gave me room to think. Pulling up my email history, another detail surfaced. Someone had downloaded a full export of my archived messages the night before. Bills, insurance forms, banking correspondence, my entire life organized and taken in one sweep. The thought of that information sitting on a stranger's device made the chair feel smaller. Scrolling through the security log, a pattern emerged. The unknown laptop followed the same naming structure. Hannah liked to use short phrases she thought were clever. Not identical, but close enough to land like a hit to the ribs. Part of me refused to believe it. We'd argued, yes, but never in a way that suggested she'd cross this boundary. Another part, familiar with the way she pushed limits, couldn't look away. I leaned closer, reading the string of letters again. The cursor hovered over the entry, flickering once, as if the person on the other end wanted me to know they were there. Sitting in the empty shop after closing, I kept tracing the login pattern, replaying the timeline. The faint hum of equipment was the only sound breaking through the tension crawling up my spine. Nothing about the evening made sense anymore. The shop door had barely shut behind me when Carl, the junior tech, leaned over the counter with a stare that carried more concern than curiosity. "Mark, you all right? Your cousin called earlier, asking if you were in some kind of trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The money thing. Those messages you sent folks online are talking." The way he said it made something sink. News traveled fast in this family, faster when the story made someone look unsteady. A few minutes passed before the alert storm from last night replayed in my mind. Those texts weren't staying contained. A tray of cracked tablets waited for repair, but the files downloaded from my email wouldn't let me focus. The export sat on the drive, like evidence of a break-in. Insurance renewals, my banking forms, tax documents, enough to create a narrative that didn't belong to me. One wrong interpretation, and people would start thinking I'd reached the age when finances needed to be supervised. Carl walked past again, slower this time. "Seriously, is everything okay?" "I'm working on it. Just a misunderstanding." "Looked like more than that." No point explaining anything to him. Too many details could spark gossip even faster. The bell above the door chimed once more, and Rosa Martinez stepped in, holding a laptop under her arm. She waved, dropped the machine on the counter, and studied my face with the precision of someone used to reading employees who pretended they weren't drowning. "You look off today," she said. "Just a rough morning. You're pacing. You never pace." Her attention locked on me longer than I liked. Something happened. Someone messed with my accounts, sent texts I didn't write, pulled down things they shouldn't have touched. Family. Not sure yet. Rosa tapped her fingers on the counter, thoughtful but firm the way she got when giving advice no one asked for. "You usually let things slide," she said. "Maybe don't do that this time. Keep emotions on the side. Look at the facts first." A breath left without warning. "I'm trying." She collected her repair ticket and lowered her voice. "Then start by deciding what belongs to you and what doesn't. Boundaries aren't optional when you're being cornered." The word cornered clung to me long after she walked out. Before lunch, my brother called. "Mark, what's going on? I've got 3 people saying you asked them for loan money." "I didn't ask anyone for anything." "Well, folks think you're struggling, maybe hiding debt you don't want to talk about." "That's not what's happening." "Then fix it, because this kind of rumor sticks fast." He hung up before I could respond. My brother never lingered on messy subjects. He treated them like chores he could toss back at me to handle alone. Still, the fact he'd heard about it meant someone was spreading a version that didn't come from me. Another look through the log suggested the same pattern, the same device, the same hours, the same steady access. A line connected every irregularity to one source. Each trace pushed the suspicion closer to home, though saying the thought out loud felt like betrayal in itself. The afternoon dripped by in fragments. A couple of customers came and went, but their voices blurred. Even the familiar clang of tools landing on the metal trays did nothing to ground me. A string of attempts hovered in the back of my mind, attempts to shape a narrative where I wasn't capable of handling my own affairs. Rosa's words resurfaced. "Look at the facts first. Fact, someone wanted control. Fact, the breach didn't come from strangers. Fact, the pattern matched someone who knew my habits." By the time evening hit, my head felt packed tight. Locking up the shop gave me a brief sense of relief, the kind that fades before it settles. The short drive home passed in a blur, headlights and street signs slipping by without leaving impressions. Hannah's backpack sat tossed near the couch, but her laptop wasn't on the small desk where she usually kept it. The absence pulled me toward it more sharply than if it had been sitting open. "Hannah." "In my room." "Where's your laptop?" "Study group. Took it with me." She appeared in the hallway a moment later, tying her hair up, acting as though nothing in the world carried weight. "You okay, Dad? Long day?" "Yeah, me too. Group project's killing me." Her expression stayed easy, too easy. It didn't match the tension in the house. Her tone carried a practiced smoothness, the kind people use when sticking to a rehearsed story. She slipped back to her room. The door stayed slightly open, letting out only faint music and tapping. I replayed her answer. It didn't explain the device logs, the timing, or the downloaded files. No confrontation formed, but nothing about it fit. My eyes drifted to the empty desk where her laptop usually sat. Maybe it really was gone for a study session. Maybe. I drove to Multnoma's central library for space to think. A public network felt safer than anything at home. The security dashboard expanded across the screen, far more entries than I remembered. Buried in the alerts was a message sent from a secondary email tied to my account. The subject referenced legal guidance for a financial guardianship petition. My pulse jumped at the word. The email used my full name, date of birth, and attached old documents, insurance scans, retirement summaries, even an expired driver's license. None of those files should have been accessible. Some lived on a rarely used hard drive. Others hadn't been opened in years. The precision in the message unsettled me more than its urgency. I tried to consider harmless explanations, lost files, an old backup, a forgotten laptop, but the thought only deepened the worry. Had I left parts of my identity scattered without knowing, the printer hummed as it produced emails, timestamps, IP logs. I collected the pages and reviewed them again. Nothing matched my habits. The pattern pointed to deliberate digging. My phone buzzed before I could dive deeper. Hannah's name appeared. "Hey, Dad, you coming home for dinner?" "Not yet." "Everything okay? Working through something?" "All right, I'll grab something for myself then." Her voice stayed light, almost casual, which only heightened the conflict inside me. She sounded exactly like someone who had no idea what I'd been uncovering, or someone who had rehearsed sounding that way. The call ended, leaving me surrounded by printed evidence. Nothing in those pages connected directly to Hannah. Still, the timing, the IP address, the familiarity in the device names it all pointed toward the same corner. The line between suspicion and fact blurred in a way that made my stomach knot. Packing the printouts into a folder, I logged out from every service and headed toward the exit. A couple of patrons passed by talking about weekend plans, their easy chatter clashing with the storm building in my mind. At home, Hannah greeted me from the kitchen counter. "Did you eat?" she asked, slicing into a takeout container. "Not yet." "You should. You look worn out." Her concern felt practiced, but I didn't challenge it. Instead, I eased into a question. "Your study group meeting, how long did it go?" She shrugged. "A few hours. We're trying to finish a presentation early so we don't scramble later." "Everyone brought their own laptops." "Yeah. Why?" The fork paused at her mouth, eyes narrowing just slightly, as if she sensed a test hidden in the conversation. The moment stretched thin, and she turned away before I could press further. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. My brother's voice came through the speaker. "Mark, I talked to Hannah earlier," he said. "She's worried about you. Says you've been misplacing things, forgetting conversations." "I haven't forgotten anything." "Well, she's concerned. And you know people talk. Just wanted to check in." A flicker of anger rose, not loud, but sharp. Hannah hadn't mentioned speaking with him today. Telling relatives I'd been confused or forgetful tightened the trap around me. A fabricated narrative like that could justify the email to the law office. It could justify everything. After ending the call, I went to my room, opened the laptop, and pulled up the email dashboard again. The trash folder sat nearly empty, except for a single draft. Clicking on it revealed the outline of the same guardianship request I'd seen earlier. The draft held correction marks, revisions, and a timestamp from a night when Hannah had been home doing research for her project. The cursor blinked at the end of a sentence she hadn't finished. My name sat at the top of the page, typed in a font she often used for college submissions. The call came early, before the coffee had finished brewing. A bank representative introduced himself, then cleared his throat in a way that told me he dreaded the next sentence. "Mr. Ellison, we're reaching out to confirm a loan application submitted under your name yesterday." "A loan application? I didn't file anything." "That's why we're calling. The form was rejected because several details didn't align with our records. We wanted to verify whether you authorized the attempt." A cold weight settled over me. No, I didn't authorize anything. He explained that the applicant had provided my address, my employment history, and a signature similar enough to raise only a minor flag. Hearing that someone had tried to bind me to a large loan made the earlier incidents feel like small scratches compared to this cut. At the branch, the manager brought out a copy of the application. My name sat at the top in bold letters. The handwriting on one of the supplemental forms carried a familiar curve. Not exact, but close enough that someone might think I'd signed under stress. A slow pressure built behind my ribs. This wasn't a rogue text or a stolen password. Someone had stepped into my life as if they owned the right to shape it. The manager asked, "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "Not yet," I said, though a name had already formed in the back of my mind. Walking out left my legs heavier than when I'd walked in. Small acts could be brushed aside. This one couldn't. It created real consequences, legal, financial, reputational. Whoever filed that application didn't want attention. They wanted control. Evening rolled around before I knew it. Hannah came home later than usual, tossing her bag near the couch. A stack of papers slipped out. She ducked quickly to gather them, but one sheet caught my eye. A loan worksheet crumpled with a few practice signatures scribbled near the corner. The loops in the lettering matched the supplemental form I'd seen at the bank. "Group project?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "Yeah," she said, stuffing the papers deeper into her bag. "We're doing a case study. It's boring stuff." "Ma." She stood, smoothing her hair, avoiding my eyes. The explanation felt thin, like fabric stretched too far. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed hard. A notification from my financial account flashed across the screen. Attempted sign-in blocked. Unknown device. Request denied. Another alert followed someone trying to change the recovery number. My thumb hit the switch for two-factor authentication so fast the phone nearly slipped. A new code appeared instantly, a string of numbers that meant the intrusion was happening in real time. Whoever was trying to get in hadn't stopped, not even after the failed bank attempt. A thought surfaced they might be in the house. The hallway felt unusually still as I moved toward the living room. Hannah stood near the coffee table, her laptop open-head bent over the keyboard. When the code appeared on my lock screen again, her shoulders twitched. She turned slowly. Her eyes moved from my phone to her screen and back to me. The blood drained from her face so quickly it startled me. "Why is that code popping up, Hannah?" Her mouth opened slightly, then shut. She tried to close the laptop, fumbling the motion. The silence between us wasn't calm. It carried the crackle of something fraying past repair. She clutched the device like a shield. "It's not what you think," she whispered. The words shook, but they didn't soften anything. My phone vibrated again with another blocked attempt, the kind that required immediate action to prevent further damage. Stepping forward, I glanced at her laptop screen. The cursor hovered over the security settings of my primary account. Her hand trembled around the edge of the device. She whispered again, "Dad, I can explain." I didn't respond. The truth had already arrived before she spoke. It stood there in the glow of her screen, threaded through every alert on my phone, woven into the signature on that forged form at the bank. Her fingers tightened around the laptop as if letting go meant surrender. The screen still glowed against her hands. "Put it down, Hannah," I said. My voice stayed low because raising it never helped either of us. "I'm just checking something for class." "Set it down." She hesitated, not in confusion, but in calculation. The kind of pause people make when they're deciding how much of a lie they can get away with. My phone buzzed again, another blocked login attempt. The notification named the same device she held. A long breath pushed through my chest. Years of choosing calm over confrontation pressed in at once. Late-night homework I finished for her bills. I covered without questions. Arguments I swallowed whole because she seemed too fragile to handle the truth. Every time I'd kept the peace came back in a rush, the kind that burns instead of soothes. The buzz came again. Another attempt, another denial. "Hannah," I said, "that's your laptop trying to get into my accounts." She snapped, "It's not. Something's wrong with your phone. I'm fixing it." Her eyes glossed and tears formed too fast to feel real. She placed the back of her hand against her forehead, trembling just enough to look overwhelmed. "My account's frozen," she said. "I'm trying to help so yours doesn't get locked, too." The tab on her screen contradicted every word. The forged email draft remained open along with the fake account recovery setup. I leaned closer just enough to read a line she hadn't erased yet. "Why is that email open? I told you it's for class." That's my signature you practiced." "It isn't," she shot back, suddenly louder. "You're twisting things. You don't remember half of what you do anymore." The statement landed harder than the attempts on my account. Not because it was true, because she'd prepared it. Hannah wasn't reacting. She was using a script. "You think I'm losing my mind?" "I think you need help," she said, wiping her cheeks aggressively. "You forget conversations. You get confused. Someone has to step in. I'm doing the responsible thing." Responsible. The word tasted sour. My phone chimed again. New notification recovery number change requested. Cancelled. She flinched. Every piece fell into place in a way I couldn't dodge anymore. Yet standing there, I couldn't yell, couldn't accuse. The part of me that had spent 24 years worrying about whether she felt supported kept wrestling with the part that finally saw what she'd been doing. The mix left me numb. She kept talking. "I'm trying to fix this. You're making it harder. Just let me handle it." "No," slipped out before I had time to think. A sharp inhale came from her like I'd broken a pact. "You don't understand anything anymore," she said, pointing at me with a shaking hand. "You act like you're fine, but you're not. You don't see how bad it's gotten." Her voice rose frantic and sharp around the edges. "I had to prepare. What if something happened to you? What if your accounts got messed up? What if people found out how unstable you've been?" The words blurred. Half accusation, half justification. None of them matched reality. They twisted concern into something dangerous. I stepped back the room, feeling smaller by the second. She reached out as if to grab my arm, but my body moved before my mind did. Distance became the only thing that made sense. "Where are you going?" she asked, panicked now. "Out. Don't leave. We're not done talking. We're done for now." The doorknob felt cold when I touched it. Her voice followed me down the walkway, still tangled in excuses, fear, guilt, whatever she could pull up fast enough to keep me near. The car engine steadied beneath my hands. Driving helped me breathe, even if each breath scratched. Rows of warehouses blurred past trucks lined along the street waiting for pickup. The industrial district rarely offered comfort, but the predictability of metal and concrete did something the house hadn't done in weeks. It stopped things from spinning. The further I went, the more the truth settled in. She wasn't reacting to stress. She'd built an entire narrative where I was incompetent, then tried to make it real. Every login attempt, every forged file, every concerned call from relatives had been part of the scaffolding. The story she'd constructed left no space for the father she actually had, only the father she needed me to appear to be. Stopping near a loading dock, I rested my head against the steering wheel. A phrase Rosa had once told me echoed. "People show you their intentions long before they say them." The phone chimed again. For a second, I expected another security alert. Instead, an unread email notification appeared. "Mr. Ellison, we've received your inquiry about establishing financial guardianship. Please, let us know when you'd like to complete the petition." The message came from the law office Hannah had contacted. The folder felt heavier than it should have, as I carried it toward the law office. A receptionist guided me toward a conference room, then left me alone with my thoughts long enough for doubts to creep in if everyone believed the fabricated story would evidence even matter. The attorney entered a few minutes later, greeting me with a polite expression that didn't reveal whether he saw me as a client or a liability. "Mr. Ellison, thanks for coming in. You asked to review the emails you sent us." "I didn't send them," I said, placing the folder on the table. "That's why I'm here." He opened a laptop and brought up a thread labeled with my name. The messages sounded like me, short, direct, polite. Someone had studied how I wrote. "This is the correspondence we received from your address," he explained. "You wanted guidance on starting a financial guardianship petition." A sour twist moved through my stomach. "Show me everything." He scrolled further, stopping at an attachment I hadn't known existed. "This is the video you sent. It helped us verify identity before responding." A thumbnail appeared, and when he played it, the room tightened around me. The footage showed a view of a desk similar to mine, with a muted background and papers spread out neatly. A small box at the bottom corner displayed my face or something made to resemble it. The image didn't move naturally. The expression shifted a little too stiffly, the timing slightly delayed. "That's not me," I said. The attorney paused the video. "It resembles you, Mr. Ellison, enough that we accepted it as proof." "Someone faked this. It's a screen recording with my picture stitched in." "So you're saying none of this was authorized by you?" "Correct." For the first time since the messages began, a thin thread of hope surfaced. A forgery that Obvious once pointed out could dismantle the entire case Hannah was trying to build. It proved impersonation. It proved intent. But it didn't erase the damage already circling through the family whispers about my memory claims that I'd been forgetting things, stories I knew she'd planted. The attorney leaned back slightly. "If what you're saying is true, you might need to file a formal identity fraud report." "I brought copies of everything," I said, sliding the folder his way. "Look at the timestamps. Look at the IP logs." He skimmed the papers, nodding slowly. The first person who'd truly believed me. The meeting wrapped, and as I stepped out into the hallway, my phone rang. Hannah's name flashed across the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Where are you?" she demanded, not even trying to sound calm. "Out." I talked to Aunt Laura. She said you called sounding confused again. "Dad, this is getting serious." "I didn't call her. She told me you mixed up dates and rambled about bills. You scared her." The grip on my phone tightened. "Hannah, stop telling people things that aren't true." "I'm trying to protect you," she said sharply. "Someone has to step in. You won't let me help, and it's getting dangerous." The words seemed rehearsed precise enough that she'd probably delivered them multiple times already. "I just left a law office," I said. "Why?" "To see the emails you wrote." A sharp inhale crackled through the speaker. "Dad, you're not thinking straight. I saw the video." "That wasn't you misunderstood. I was trying to organize things, plan ahead." I ended the call before she could bury me under more twisted logic. Doubt flickered in my chest anyway, small, cruel, and familiar. What if I had overlooked something? What if I'd forgotten where those documents were stored? What if the strain of the last few days had made me unreliable? The uncertainty pushed me back toward the library. Its public terminals gave me distance from the house, from Hannah, from the storm she'd pulled me into. Pulling up the email logs once more, I dug deeper than before. Old sessions appeared, many of them tied to that same unfamiliar device. A third email address surfaced, one I'd never created, bearing my name with a minor variation. That was the account used to communicate with the firm in the earliest exchanges. Clicking through felt like peeling back layers of someone else's plan. Drafts, deleted messages, a set of practice attempts where she had tried different versions of my signature. Each discovery tightened the knot in my ribcage. The library clock crept toward closing time. I logged out, gathered the printed sheets, and walked toward the parking garage without paying attention to the people passing around me. Sitting in the driver's seat, I spread the papers across my lap. The weight of them made something settle in me, not peace, but clarity. Hannah had crossed a line she couldn't pretend away. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was an unread voicemail from the attorney I'd just met. "Mr. Ellison, let us know whenever you're ready to move forward with a fraud report. We'll assist however we can." The decision no longer felt optional. Staring at the printed evidence piled against my chest, I dialed the number back. When the attorney answered, I said, I want to file an identity fraud report. The clerk at the Identity Protection Office gathered every sheet I handed over: timestamps, login traces, forged emails, the fake video stacking them in a growing pile. She didn't look surprised. Cases like mine probably passed through her desk weekly, but she treated each document with the seriousness I hadn't found anywhere else. "We'll file this as a full identity fraud claim," she said. "You did the right thing bringing evidence." Her words didn't comfort me, but they steadied something inside. After weeks of watching my life twist in someone else's hands, I finally pushed back. Leaving the building, I stopped beside a bench to reorganize the copies in my folder. Then the work began. Every password changed, recovery keys replaced, two-step authentication added across accounts, old devices, unlinked shared drives, closed backup emails removed. A process that should have been tedious became the closest thing to relief I'd felt in months. When the DMV opened later that afternoon, I went straight there and requested new identification documents. The clerk asked whether I'd lost anything. I chose not to explain. Some stories only grew messier when you tried to justify them. A call came from the bank while I sat in the parking lot. "Mr. Ellison, we've reviewed your case," the investigator said. "We confirmed that the loan application was fraudulent. The signature was traced to a forged submission, and the device used doesn't match any of your usual access points. We're escalating it to our fraud division." The confirmation carried a strange weight. Vindication didn't erase the damage, but it gave shape to the truth. Someone had impersonated me, and the bank would put that into an official report. I drove home with a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in years. The moment the door opened, I heard Hannah rifling through drawers. Her steps hit the floor sharply, agitated, impatient. She met me in the hallway with red eyes and a voice already raised. "Why can't I get into anything?" she demanded. "My access is blocked on every app. The Wi-Fi won't take my login. My email keeps kicking me out. What did you do?" Her anger rose faster than her breath, than her. "You need to explain, right now." Instead of answering, I placed the folder on the counter and opened it. Hannah's attention flicked to the papers, then back to me. "What is that evidence?" I said. "All of it." She tried to snatch the stack, but I pulled it back and read from the top page. "Secondary email account created under my name. Accessed from your laptop on March 3rd, 4th, 6th. Data exports downloaded on these dates also from your device. And this," I held up a sheet with a printout of the fake video frame, "was sent to a law office last week." Her face lost color. The anger drained, replaced by shock so complete it made her sway. "Dad, wait, just let me—" "No," I said, steady for the first time. "You're going to listen." Page after page went onto the table, login histories, recovery attempts, the forged loan application. Her expression twisted between disbelief and fear. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she whispered. "You tried to replace my recovery contacts." I panicked. "You sent messages pretending to be me. I thought you needed structure. You created a petition claiming I wasn't competent. I was scared about money. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. School's expensive. Rent is going up. I can't keep living like this." The excuses unraveled faster than she could form them. "You weren't supposed to see the drafts," she muttered. "I was just preparing options. I didn't want you to fall apart and drag me with you." That sentence hung between us. It explained everything and nothing. A call buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it long enough to finish laying out the last sheet on the table. "I filed a fraud report," I said. "Everything is already with the Identity Protection Office, and the bank has escalated your forged application." Her mouth parted in disbelief. "You reported me." "I reported the person who did this," I said. "Whoever that turns out to be." She stumbled back a step, gripping the edge of the counter. "Dad, please, you can't let this go to the police. It was a mistake." "Multiple mistakes," I corrected. "And none of them stopped when you had the chance." The phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. A voicemail transcribed on the screen read, "This is the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department. We need to schedule a time to speak with Hannah Ellison regarding an identity fraud case." Hannah saw my expression change. "Who was that?" "The sheriff's office." Her breath caught, and she sank onto the nearest chair. I didn't touch her, didn't move toward her. The air between us shifted, not a break, not a clean tear, but something deeper. Something that couldn't be patched with apologies or explanations. The officer at the front desk pointed me toward an interview room where a detective waited with a laptop and a stack of intake forms. The atmosphere wasn't tense, just procedural, which somehow made the whole thing harder. He gestured for me to sit, then opened his notebook. "Mr. Ellison, let's go through everything step by step. Provide what you can, and we'll fill in the rest." The folder landed on the table with a dull thud. Pages slid apart slightly, records, logs, printouts, the fake video frame. Each sheet carried a piece of what Hannah had done, and laying them out in front of the detective forced me to admit something I'd tried to avoid saying aloud. "My daughter accessed my accounts." I said the words heavier than I expected. "She created emails, sent messages pretending to be me, and tried to take over my finances." Repeating it made my chest tighten. No father imagines his child becoming the person he must report to law enforcement. The detective didn't look surprised or judgmental. He simply gathered the information with the calm of someone who'd seen too many versions of the same betrayal. "Thank you," he said. "You're doing what you need to do to protect yourself. Families aren't exempt from accountability." A few signatures later, the statement was official. The detective uploaded the evidence into their system, tagging each file. "We'll contact Ms. Ellison shortly. She'll be required to appear for an interview." Hannah arrived later that afternoon. They didn't let me in the room with her, but when the detective stepped out, he gave a summary. "She didn't deny it," he said. "Didn't explain much either. Mostly avoided eye contact. We showed her the logs, the signatures, the emails. She admitted to accessing your accounts for what she described as planning purposes. That's enough for a formal charge, but the DA is recommending probation and mandatory counseling instead of jail time." A strange mix of relief and grief washed through me. Accountability mattered, but so did the consequences she'd now carry into adulthood. "She won't be allowed near your accounts anymore," the detective added. "The court will restrict her access formally." When I left the sheriff's department, the sun had moved lower, but the day still felt unfinished. Returning to the shop offered something solid to touch. Carl asked if I could look at a malfunctioning tablet. I nodded and went straight to work. No explanations. No stories. Fixing the device gave my hands something useful to do, while the rest of me tried to catch up. Between customers, I filled out forms for the Identity Protection Program. New state ID, updated banking credentials, revised passwords with stronger keys. Every step cut another thread tying Hannah's actions to my daily life. By the end of the week, most of the logistical cleanup was done. What remained was emotional debris, quieter but heavier. One evening I got in the car and drove toward the Willamette River. The road curved past old warehouses and empty lots. The river stretched long beside me, carrying the same steady rhythm it always had. I didn't come for reflection. The drive had become something else, an ending of a chapter I'd stayed in too long. For the first time in weeks, the pressure in my chest eased a little. Not forgiveness, not understanding, more like a release after holding a door shut against a storm. Life didn't transform overnight. Work stayed the same. Bills needed paying. But I made one change for myself. I joined a community class on financial safety for older adults. Sitting among people who'd been tricked by relatives, neighbors, caretakers, it didn't comfort me, but it made the experience less isolating. The instructor talked about signs of manipulation, how fraud often begins with emotional leverage. Several heads nodded around the room. Mine did too. A woman beside me whispered, "I thought I was the only one." "You're not," I said, and it was true for both of us. Weeks later, a volunteer coordinator invited me to attend a planning meeting for an outreach group. She said they needed people willing to talk about real cases, anonymous, of course, to help others recognize early warning signs. On the evening of the meeting, I walked into the community center with my phone already set to its newest security settings. The change wasn't dramatic, just a simple toggle, but it felt like closing the door on something that had followed me for years. A few people waved me toward an open seat. I nodded back, took a breath, and stepped fully into the room.